Hi, Elliot Rodger. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against all of you. For the last 8 years of my life, ever since I've hit puberty, I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires, all because girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old, and still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. I've been through college, 2.5 years, more than that actually, and I'm still a virgin. It's been very fortunate. College is the time when everyone experiences such things such as sex and fun.
Not a YouTuber, just like making videos. You read the title, you know what it's about. I'm going to talk about this Elliot Rodger guy, but I'm just going to use him as a crutch. You know, but because there's a pattern here. I'm recognizing a pattern, and we got to talk about it. You know what I mean? We can sit up there and talk about the fucking knockout game, you know, obsessively. But, you know what I'm saying? Elliot Rodger, you know what I'm saying? This is not an isolated incident. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you actually saw that video where he's confessing and he says he's going to do stuff. You know, you know what I'm saying? I was going to think about putting that video on my start this video out with Elliot Rodger's video, but I don't know. Some people's videos are being taken down because of that, so I'll leave that alone. But you know what I'm saying? My analysis of this dude. He seems creepy. He does seem like someone who lives in seclusion, but he doesn't seem like I'm not going to call guys ugly or a pretty boy, but he looks like a member of some sort of freaking boy band, you know. And then when he crashed his car, it was a BMW. I don't know if it was his or his parents or whatever. He was only 22 years old, but you see what I'm saying? You know what I mean? I don't think that, you know, a guy like this would be hurtful to a female's eye and so forth. But I guess this guy, you know what I'm saying, he didn't know how to interact with women, you know. But ultimately, I think it's just some sort of psychological problem. I don't think that, you know, this guy just, if he had a hard time with women, you know what I'm saying, it was something up here. But, you know what I'm saying, it's crazy. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about, there's other guys who who committed similar atrocities. You know, and that's the thing. I'm like, we got to talk about it. And I think about the guy, George Sodini. He was the guy in Pittsburgh. And he was a 48-year-old man who walked into an aerobics class and shot up a bunch of women. Now, he injured 10 women, killed 3 women, and then he killed himself. You know what I mean? Same scenario. I'm like, same synopsis. This guy, you know, in his confession, he wrote a letter, George Sodini, that, you know what I'm saying, he was frustrated with women. You know, I'm like, and George Sodini used the black thing. You know what I'm saying? He said something about when Barack Obama was in office that, you know, all the white women like black men. They really want a black man, something to do with slavery or whatever. I don't know. This dude was, I'm like, he was nuts. But the thing is, with both these guys, they didn't look like, you know what I mean, dudes that, you know what I mean, they looked like they had something going for them, you know. This Sodini guy, you know, let's say he was a business owner or whatever. This guy was in shape for his age, you know, he worked out a lot. Just a lot of, I don't know. And the thing is, Enigmahood, a YouTuber by the name of Enigmahood, he did a video on the Elliot Rodger's thing, and he said that this guy was a victim. I'm like, what? How can he say that Elliot Rodger was a victim? He went on and said that everything a man does, he does for sex. He tries to appeal to women, you know, and then when he's rejected or whatever, you know what I'm saying, it creates psychological problems. I get that, but still, how is this guy a victim or whatever? A lot of these guys, you know what I'm saying, these introverts, you know what I mean, they chose that, you know what I mean? I don't know, I guess they have a hard time interacting or having friends, but still they, you know, I don't know, I guess some guys can read a book, you know what I mean, do something, you know, get advice, you know what I mean, go to counseling, but still, these are just, I'm like, these guys are really a minority, you know what I mean, that's a small, I feel that most dudes, the timid guys, they don't do this, you know, they just go about living their lives. Me, well, when I was particularly 21, 22, you know what I mean, I tried to get away from people, you know what I mean, I told my story about how I got evicted from my apartment because, you know, too many people want to hang around and so forth. But you know what I'm saying, that's silly. That's silly for Enigmahood to, you know, to say, you know what I'm saying, something as foolish as that, as this guy was the victim or whatever, that we need to see. Like, first of all, how do we identify this problem? You know, these guys, you know, and the thing is, it's these guys' fault. I don't think they have a problem grabbing a woman's attention. It's just once you get their attention, you can't creep them out. You can't say, hey, you want to, you know, go to my house and see my dead rabbit or some shit like that. Hell, it's better to have bad breath and BO than to give the females the jeepers, you know, or whatever. And I think about that one guy, the Virginia Tech shooting. You know, they say this guy was also, you know what I'm saying, an introvert or whatever, that he wanted to make relations and females were rejecting him and so forth, and then he went on his killing spree. You see what I'm saying? And with this, so these things, you know what I'm saying, overall, mass shootings are just happening so frequent that, you know, people just, you know what I'm saying, it doesn't even raise an eyebrow anymore, you know what I mean? But yeah, and still everybody wants to talk about this knockout game, because I understand, because you know what I'm saying, you can, because with that you can identify the culprits, you know what I mean, black dudes walking around the street, you know what I'm saying, be careful of them, they're going to knock you out. But hence, when we were at school, when we was at college, and then we at work, we see these guys, you know, these recluse or whatever, you know, that don't talk to nobody, they don't associate with nobody. And a lot of these guys, people run up to them and try to associate with them. They be like, hey buddy, hey man, you want to go out or you want to grab some beers or whatever, especially in college. I'm like, you know, in college, you know, dudes like me, when I was in college, dudes, especially white dudes, is just, I don't even know, talk about, hey man, we're gonna go to a bar and get some drink, we're gonna get high, bro, we got some babes, you know what I'm saying, hey dude, you wanna run it, you know what I'm saying, you wanna run along. And hence, even when someone does seem like they want to withdraw themselves, people will come to them and try to pull them in. Like, for instance, when I was first went to college, you know what I'm saying, I was kind of like a wallflower, you know what I'm saying, I was standoffish, you know, and there were just so many people trying to pull me into their circles, like, hey dude, what's going on there, man? Hey, you know what I mean, we're about to do this or whatever. So I'm pretty sure with the Virginia Tech shooter and with this guy, you know what I'm saying, unless they do something really weird, you know what I mean, unless they smell real bad or just do stuff that's just, that people look at and just, you know what I mean, like, hey, this guy's really weird. But if just a typical shy guy that's quiet, you know what I mean, a lot of people will try to, you know, pull you in a circle. And if this guy drove a BMW, yeah, you know, but I said, man, it's a recurring problem. You know, we gotta talk about it, you know. And the thing is, so I now, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna insert race into it, you know, why? Because I'm a black, and that's what black people do on a black corner of YouTube. And I'm not gonna say, you know what I mean, I don't know every single story that ever happened every day that, you know what I'm saying, a black guy doesn't do this stuff, but hey, You don't hear about a black guy doing stuff. Now, black men, yeah, we will shoot some shit up when it comes to a female. Yeah, we will kill over a woman. Yeah, I'm like, usually a woman that we've already slept with and we have relations with, and there, you know, we're that, you know what I'm saying, that's being unfaithful or being promiscuous, or we're just you know what I'm saying, not as sure of herself that she's gonna flirt with somebody else. But as far as the dude who can't get, you know what I mean, any sort of relations, you know, and just want to shoot the place up, no, you just don't hear about it. No, the thing is, with one, that, you know, when I went to a predominantly white school, and then when I went to college and hung around white boys who came from an all-white school, a lot of them used to say one thing. They say that some white girls will date a black guy just because he's black. You know, they'll be like, yeah, we had this one black guy in school and he got girls all because he was black. You know, they say this over and over again. Now, when I remember in school, there was a guy, a dude, and he was a black guy, and he looked like one of the fish characters from, you know SpongeBob, how they draw their trouts or whatever. He looked like a black fish. He had like these big lips, but they were stretched out all like across his face. You know, he had these bifocals on that made that shrunk his eyes. Like when he wore his glasses, his eyes seemed a whole lot smaller. You know, he was a weird dude. He was a nerdy guy, but he also had a bad attitude. He was like a nerd with a bad attitude that will cuss you out. That's very vulgar, you know. And this particular guy, I'm like, I just have a hard time seeing this dude with a black female. You know what I mean? He just wasn't the type of guy that appealed to black female. But it was okay because he got white women, you know, and some pretty decent looking white girls. So it's in this small town where the population of black people you could count on, you know, your fingers and toes. You know, he's just going to get white women. You know what I mean? Just by default or whatever. You know, and I feel that a lot of these introverts are these guys that are just socially awkward. You know, you know what I'm saying? They don't have that angle. You know, and that's one thing about a black woman, that she's not going to mess around with a white dude that is just weird. You know what I mean? Or creepy. You know, who acts, you know what I'm saying, who has a secluded personality and so forth. And I'm serious. And you know, and that's something we can think about. You know, because you know what I'm saying, because it's going to happen, you know, over and over again, because these guys are going to get frustrated, and they're going to go and they're going to hate women. And I'm going to compare Tommy Sotomayor to a guy named Tom Lexis. You know, as harmful, as a deleterious as Tommy's rhetoric is, I don't even want to mention his name. I'm like, still, his it's hard for me to see a black dude opening fire on black women, you know. That's, you know what I mean, on women, period. As Tom Lexis, this is a guy, you know what I'm saying, who bashes women, who talks down to women or whatever. He may appeal to his white followers to do something because they have a history of doing this. Now take a look at me, you know what I'm saying, and the jabs people take at me. They think that I'm some kind of patroon when it comes to women. You know, I don't have a problem, you know what I mean, pulling females. You know, matter of fact, I've been, you know what I'm saying, I never mentioned this, and a lot of people won't believe me, but I've actually been raped once. I don't even want to get into how I got raped. I'm not saying I was female physically, because you can't physically do, but, you know, certain circumstances. But, you know what I'm saying, I've had females approach me, you know, and so forth. You know what I mean? All I had to do to get certain women was just to answer her questions, you know what I mean? She'd be like, do you have your own place, and so forth. I'm like, it's not that hard. All you have to do is, you know what I'm saying, to get a woman, and it has nothing to do with looks. Now, people on this culture sack of YouTube is to talk about, you know, looks or whatever. No, looks have nothing to do with it. You know, you'll come across a polka dotted dinosaur, a flying polka dotted dinosaur, before you come across a dude, especially in his 30s, that said, hey man, I can't get a woman because females call me ugly. A dude who's broke, a 35-year-old dude who is still flipping burgers or putting them on the conveyance belts, but we should still be able to pull a female. You know what I mean? It's just that, first of all, you got to be able to approach females, and you have to make a female comfortable around you. You know, and that's the trick. I'm like, you can even be sort of corny and not have any game, but if you can approach them and make them feel comfortable and not scare them off, whatever, you know what I'm saying, you should be okay. But one thing that Enigma had brought into the equation, he talks about prostitution. No, I'll tell you this right now. When you're dealing with a lot of these dorks, especially when they're younger, a prostitute won't help. Yes, a prostitution will let them get off their animalistic needs or whatever, their sexual needs. You know what I'm saying? They'll be able to blow their wad, but it'll make them more depressed afterwards. Because a lot of these young guys, you know what I'm saying, who can't get a real girl, and if they had to resort to paying for sex, it's a damage to their ego. Sure, you know what I'm saying, they'll be able to get off. But overall, afterwards, they'll become, because sometimes men can be as depressed as females, and they'll be like, damn, you know what I mean, I gotta pay for sex. You know, especially when you're younger or whatever, so no, you know what I mean. And then Enigma Hood says, one of the answers is to, the solutions is to make prostitution legal. No, I'm like, yeah, prostitution is the easiest crime, almost one of the easiest crimes to get away with. It's almost like, you know what I'm saying, turning tags off mattresses. Yeah, no, even when a lot of these guys get caught or whatever, you know what I'm saying, they'll get a warning because they gotta literally catch you in the act. They gotta literally see the transition go down, and you know what I mean, and the only person, the way they'll catch you if it's like a police sting. So no, I'm like, so many people do it, and hence, this guy, Elliot Rodger, seemed like he had access to money, and one of the safer routes is to go get you $150 per one of the high-end ones that'll come to your house or come to a hotel room or whatever. But no, that's not the answer. You know, I guess these guys are just, I don't know, they're just so withdrawal from society, and ultimately it's psychological problems. You know, that's the reason why they can't associate or whatever, rub elbows with the people or whatever, or they have anxiety attacks or whatever. So and it's we gotta talk about it. You know, if we can talk about the knockout game, we should talk about this. You know, and I'm gonna leave it at this. There was one particular guy in one of my college courses, and this guy, if there was a loner ass black dude, if I ever seen one, it was this guy. You know, who I thought. Now this dude, this was 1998, and this dude wore a flat top. Now I understand that flat tops are back. You know what I'm saying? The old comes back. You know what I mean? Just like skinny jeans, which people forget they were rocking skinny jeans back in the 1980s. But that's subject for another video. But this dude had in 1998, he had a high top fade, which nobody was wearing them in 1998. He used to wear a trench coat even when it was hot. And this guy was just so, he was just so, he was an introvert. You know, he was straight, he looked like a black version of Cal Reese from the Terminator movies or whatever. You know, but the killer part, I was messing with this female, and this dude was this girl's ex-boyfriend. You know, and this female, she was nice looking. You know, she was a real smart college girl. You know, so that kind of proved that this guy wasn't so a loner. And the female told me that the reason why they broke up, because, he wasn't faithful. You know, he was running around with females as young as 17, as old as 35. Now, bear in mind, this is when I was like 19 years old. So, I was 20. Yeah, 21. You know, so that's what I'm saying. You know, I was like, but I'm not saying that there ain't black nerdy guys out there who can't push up on women. I'm not saying that. But you know what I'm saying, you just don't hear about it, you know, that them just going off on a mass killing spree because they have a hard time getting sex. And prostitution ain't the answer. Alright, thanks for watching. It's Sally Forth.